And now I want to hand it over to the President of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
Joe Biden closing out the NATO summit in Washington, D.C. that he hosted, introducing President Zelensky from Ukraine.
Says loudly and clearly. And now I want to hand it over to the President of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
It was actually deftly handled by Zelensky in that moment, but boy, the gasp, not just in that room, but across the country of anyone who was watching this. Elaine, a lot of people are just saying, listen, it can happen. It happens a lot. I get that. But for the last decade, they've been telling us that Vladimir Putin is Hitler. How do you accidentally call someone Hitler, Elaine?
Yeah, the gasp of when I was watching that, I couldn't believe it. And when I watched it back again, I thought, oh my goodness, if he hadn't caught himself and Zelensky had to walk up and make the correction.
Oh man.
Just so horrible, like just how horrible that was for everybody. But again, it's just tragic. But tragedy aside, the reality is what the American people need to remember is that just having a new candidate on the Democratic ticket does not solve the problem of failed Democratic policy. Remember, all Democrats will believe in continuing the inflationary spending. All Democrats will continue with the government overreach and regulatory onslaught that has hurt our small businesses. And all Democrats believe in allowing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to expire.
True. Alec, this moment, though, beyond it just being sort of, maybe a slip up, maybe a understandable mistake when you got Putin on the mind, it demonstrated for everybody that how serious this is because he's on the world stage. He's representing us at such a high level, and he can do something like this. It sort of, in my opinion, raises the stakes even more on the problem with the president.
Yeah, he's standing like in front of a very large delegation of NATO members and politicians from various countries that are members of NATO. I made a kind of a clip yesterday of a different camera angle than what we viewed of all the reactions from these NATO politicians. And they're politicians, so they're all pretty stoic and handle it pretty well. There are a couple of like very shocked reactions of what is essentially somebody had happened to tweet yesterday that Joe Biden introducing Zelensky as Putin is kind of like somebody introducing Winston Churchill as Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Right before a speech. It's ridiculous. And the reactions from these NATO politicians were stunned, with one guy looking off stage to his handlers like, did I hear that right? Am I like getting a bad translation or something? It's so crazy.
Yeah. Gabe, do you take this as just, a understandable verbal flub, or do you think this is another example of the brain of the president sort of malfunction? That's the word that we've been using a lot. He malfunctioned again. He malfunctioned.
Well, it's obviously this is not an isolated circumstance. It's increasing. There's perpetual situations in which he's saying things that are incoherent. And I think Alec made a good point, which is this is on the world stage. Our foreign adversaries are watching. We have an intensifying conflict in the Middle East, where our ally Israel is being attacked by pretty much on all sides by Iran-backed proxies. And then you have China and Russia who are all watching, and they certainly see a president who doesn't seem like he can string together a few words. So it's obviously problematic. It's obviously, people are laughing at it. It's comical, but it obviously is very serious and it's problematic.
Yeah. And Elaine, it also points out that all the questions and answers that the president has engaged in since his debate 2 weeks ago, whenever he demonstrates how he's fine and he's on top of his game, he always focuses on foreign policy issues. He points to NATO, he points to Europe, he points to China. And I think that also points into a pretty stark example of the fact that he's ignoring things here at home. You just talked about the Democrat policies and the inflationary spending and the problem with crime in our streets and the lack of consumer confidence. That's not even on his radar right now, it doesn't seem.
I mean, he's been immersed in it obviously for several days now, and so that's what he's pulling from as his most recent memory to talk about. But sadly enough, when he was asked about the Israel conflict with Palestine yesterday, he didn't even mention the American hostages that are still being held, which was very saddening to me to hear, is that he wasn't acknowledging that at all and was focused on many other issues surrounding it, and aid to Gaza and ceasefire and things like that. But what about the Americans that are still held there? But he does ignore the domestic policies because he believes that things are going well. Remember, there are 16 or 17 Nobel Prize winning economists that have told him his stuff works and that people are doing great as a result of his policies. And it just isn't the truth. The American people just aren't buying that narrative because they have to go to the grocery store every week. They have to fill up their gas tanks. And all of those things, there's an affordability crisis that Americans are dealing with, and that's going to continue whether Joe Biden is still the president or some other Democratic person takes his place at the top of the ticket. Those policies will continue, and the affordability crisis will continue.
Alec, you mentioned the video that you got of the different angle of that moment. There was another moment later in the day at his press conference. We're going to show it now because it's another example of what is just bizarre, strange, and can be described as his brain malfunctioning. I don't know if you saw this. Take a look, and maybe you can help explain it to me.
I'm going to go to South Korea. We're going to get the chip. What are you doing? I'm going to get Japan and...
What was that? Did he see somebody and start engaging with them in the middle of the sentence? Did you see that?
I actually hadn't seen that part of his press conference until just now. I caught a playback of a lot of the clips yesterday on Twitter, but that's a new one for me. It's almost like he may have seen someone in the audience, like maybe getting up and leaving, and he got a little upset about it, or it could be that he's just hallucinating a person there, and then starts talking about Japan and South Korea. I mean, maybe he's trying to segue into some discussion about microchips and processors. When it comes to dealing with NATO and allies and foreign adversaries like China. Just a total out of
again, since you're just seeing it for the first time. Maybe a lot of our viewers are too. Let's watch it one more time.
Korea. I'm going to go to South Korea. We're going to get the chip. What are you doing? I'm going to get Japan and Korea.
Seriously, Gabe, maybe it was he's got an earpiece and they were like feeding him something and he got distracted by it. I am dumbfounded by it. But this is the kind of thing that freaks me out. I think a lot of us out about his behavior.
Yeah, I'll be honest, Larry. I'm not going to purport here to be a Biden whisperer. I frankly did not understand anything he just said there. I don't really even know what to say about that clip because it was completely incoherent. And I think it's demonstrative of what we're seeing from the president. I mean,
yeah. Well, we'll file it under the president's brain is malfunctioning when you call Vladimir Zelensky Putin and then you immediately in the middle of the sentence get distracted by God knows what. It's disconcerting to say the least. And by the way, that's coming off of a day where we're told he turned things around and made things better. This is better, everybody, and you will accept it.